He looked like a superhero who had stepped out of a comic book and straight into real life. His muscles were carved to perfection, his jawline sharp enough to cut glass, and his confidence radiated from every flex and smirk. To fans watching him under the bright lights, Lex Luger seemed unstoppable, the kind of man who could conquer anything. But behind that flawless image was someone who was quietly falling apart, a man fighting battles that no one could see. This is not the story of a hero. It's the story of a man who had everything and somehow lost it all. Long before the world knew the name Lex Luger, he was just Lawrence Wendell Full, a kid from Buffalo, New York, born in 1958. Lawrence wasn't born into greatness. He built it with his fists, his rage, and his obsession to be better than everyone else. Football became his first battlefield. He earned a scholarship to Penn State, but his temper didn't take long to show. Arguments with coaches, fights in locker rooms, Lawrence wasn't the type to bow his head. When things didn't go his way, destruction followed. After being benched one too many times, he snapped, destroying a hotel room in anger and getting himself kicked off the team. It was the first time he lost everything he'd worked for, but it wouldn't be the last. After transferring to the University of Miami, Lawrence tried to rebuild, but the same fire that drove him forward also burned everything around him. By the mid-1980s, his football dreams were dead, but something else had begun to take root, an addiction to power. He had discovered steroids, and when his body started transforming, he felt invincible. The gym became his sanctuary and his punishment. Every rep, every lift, every drop of sweat carved him into something superhuman. But what he didn't realize was that while his muscles grew, so did the emptiness inside. One day in Tampa, inside a gym filled with grunting athletes and clanging weights, Lawrence caught the attention of two men who would change his life, Barry Windham and Hiro Matsuda. Matsuda wasn't just any trainer. He was infamous for breaking his students before building them back up. He once broke Hulk Hogan's leg just to test his will. Most men would have walked away, but not Lawrence. He saw it as a challenge, another mountain to conquer. Under Matsuda's brutal training, Lawrence Full became Lex Luger, a name inspired by the comic book villain Lex Luger and the German pistol, the Luger. It sounded dangerous, powerful, marketable. When Luger made his debut for Championship Wrestling from Florida in 1985, he was treated like a future legend. Within months, he won the Southern Heavyweight Championship. Promoters whispered his name like a prophecy, the next big thing. When he walked into Jim Crockett Promotions in 1987, barely 2 years into wrestling, he already looked like a world champion. His nickname said it all, the total package. To the fans, he was the embodiment of success. To the promoters, he was gold. But to the wrestlers backstage, he was something else entirely, a bodybuilder who had been handed everything they had fought years to earn. At first, Lex ignored the whispers and resentment. He was living his dream. He had joined wrestling's most elite faction, the Four Horsemen, replacing Ole Anderson as the group's powerhouse. He stood beside Ric Flair, the nature boy himself, draped in suits, gold chains, and arrogance. It was the image every wrestler wanted. The world saw Lex Luger as the next great champion. But success built on image alone is fragile. Beneath that polished exterior, cracks were already starting to show. In July 1987, Luger won the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship by defeating Nikita Koloff inside a steel cage, his first major title. The fans saw him as unstoppable, but backstage jealousy only grew. The veterans called him too green, a man who looked like a champion but hadn't earned it. Every compliment from a fan became another reason for someone backstage to hate him. And Lex could feel it. The more they doubted him, the harder he flexed. The harder he flexed, the more they resented him. It was a never-ending cycle. By the summer of 1988, Lex was standing across the ring from Ric Flair himself, challenging for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship at the Great American Bash. This was supposed to be his crowning moment, the night he proved everyone wrong. The crowd roared as he lifted Flair into his signature torture rack. The world watched as the referee leaned in, waiting for the champion to give up. Victory was seconds away. But then, the bell rang. The referee stopped the match, claiming Lex was bleeding too heavily to continue. Flair kept the title. The audience erupted in boos. It was a setup, a way to protect Flair's legacy while robbing Lex of his biggest win. That night, something inside him broke. It became a cruel pattern that would follow him for years. Lex Luger was always almost there, the man who looked like a god but could never quite reach the throne. He had the body, the looks, the presence, everything except the trust of those in charge. And that ate away at him. The fans saw a superstar. Lex saw a man being used. When he finally held the championship, it didn't feel like triumph. It felt like a loan, something temporary, something that could be taken away at any moment. Behind the lights and cheers, he was slowly losing faith in the dream he had built his life around. Backstage, resentment turned into open hostility. Lex had one of the first guaranteed contracts in Jim Crockett Promotions, a rarity at the time. The older wrestlers, still paid night to night, saw him as arrogant and spoiled. To them, he was just a bodybuilder in tights, not a real wrestler. To Lex, they were jealous relics, clinging to a world that was passing them by. It was a toxic environment that fed his pride and insecurity all at once. He looked like the total package, but deep down, he was anything but whole. By 1992, the cracks had become canyons. He'd done everything. Headlined shows, sold tickets, carried championships, but the emptiness only grew louder. The same drive that had once fueled him now felt like a curse. He wanted more. Not just success, but meaning. And when Vince McMahon called, offering him a chance to start fresh, he saw it as salvation. He signed the deal and walked away from the company that had made him a star. But what he didn't know was that this new chapter would take him down a path darker than anything he'd faced before. Because while Lex Luger believed he was chasing greatness, he was actually running straight toward destruction. When Lex Luger signed with Vince McMahon in 1992, he thought he had finally escaped his past. No more whispers of jealousy, no more politics, no more being almost the guy. This was supposed to be his fresh start, his moment to prove to the world that he was more than just muscles and ego. But what he didn't know was that Vince had no intention of making him a wrestler. Not yet. Vince had a new obsession, a company built entirely on physical perfection. It was called the World Bodybuilding Federation, and he wanted Lex to be the face of it. It sounded perfect. The total package promoting a world of total bodies. It was like destiny. But destiny has a cruel sense of humor. Before Luger could even flex for the cameras, his life took a violent turn. In June 1992, while riding his motorcycle, Lex lost control. The crash shattered his arm so badly that doctors had to insert a steel plate to keep it from falling apart. The injury wasn't just physical, it was symbolic. The man who had built his entire identity around strength was suddenly broken, fragile, and uncertain of his future. Months later, when he finally recovered, the Bodybuilding Federation had already collapsed. The dream was gone before it ever began. But Vince McMahon wasn't done with him. He saw potential, the perfect physique, the all-American look, the kind of man who could sell tickets and headlines. So, he brought Lex into the World Wrestling Federation, rebranding him as the narcissist, a man who couldn't stop admiring his own reflection. It was an easy fit. Lex had always been accused of arrogance. Now it became his entire character. Under the bright lights of the WWF, Luger looked like $1,000,000. Dressed in silver robes, flexing in front of mirrors, and smirking as the crowd booed, he seemed born for the spotlight. Even the steel plate in his arm became part of the act, a weapon hidden beneath the skin. But while the character worked on paper, it didn't connect with the fans. They didn't love him. They didn't even love to hate him. They just didn't care. His promos lacked fire. His charisma felt forced. For the first time, Lex realized that maybe he couldn't fake his way into the hearts of the audience. Vince McMahon, however, wasn't ready to give up. With Hulk Hogan gone, he needed a new American hero, someone who could carry the flag, sell lunchboxes, and lead the company into the next era. So, he gave Lex a second chance. On July 4th, 1993, aboard the USS Intrepid, Vince staged one of the most memorable stunts in wrestling history. A line of wrestlers tried and failed to body slam the 600-pound monster, Yokozuna. Then, out of nowhere, a helicopter landed. The crowd turned their heads as Lex Luger stepped out, dressed in red, white, and blue. The narcissist was gone, the American hero had arrived. He walked to the ring, stared Yokozuna in the eyes, and with a roar that echoed across the deck, slammed him to the mat. The crowd exploded. In that single moment, Lex Luger became the symbol of hope, America's new champion. Vince rebranded him completely. Gone were the mirrors and arrogance. Now he was made in the USA. His new campaign, the Lex Express, saw him travel across the country in a red, white, and blue bus, meeting fans, shaking hands, and promising to defeat Yokozuna for the WWF Championship. It was a marketing dream, but a personal nightmare. Because what no one knew was that Lex hated every second of it. The endless road trips, the forced smiles, the fake patriotism, it drained him. He wasn't a natural showman like Hulk Hogan. He didn't thrive on being adored. He just wanted to perform and go home. But Vince wanted him to live the role. Every handshake, every photo, every fan meeting was part of his job now. The Lex Express wasn't just a campaign, it was a prison on wheels. Everything was building up to SummerSlam 1993, Lex versus Yokozuna for the WWF title. It was supposed to be his crowning moment, the redemption he had dreamed of since losing to Ric Flair years ago. The arena was electric. Fans waved flags, chanted his name, and believed they were about to witness the birth of a new legend. Lex fought with everything he had, every punch echoing years of frustration and hope. And then, he won. Yokozuna was counted out. The bell rang. Balloons fell from the ceiling. Confetti exploded. Lex celebrated as if he had just won the title. But he hadn't. The championship stayed with Yokozuna. The fans were confused. The celebration felt hollow, and deep down Lex knew it. He could see it in Vince's eyes. Disappointment. The company had tried to make him the next Hogan, but the magic just wasn't there. The fans didn't connect with him the same way. Behind the curtain, whispers began again. He's not the guy. He doesn't have it. And once again, Lex found himself in the same position he had been in his entire career. Almost there, but never quite enough. Over the next 2 years, the decline was slow but steady. He co-won the 1994 Royal Rumble with Bret Hart, but even that felt like a shared victory. A half win, a compromise. At WrestleMania X, he faced Yokozuna again, but this time he lost by disqualification. Another failure. Another headline that slipped through his fingers. By 1995, he wasn't the company's golden boy anymore. He was teaming with the British Bulldog as the Allied Powers, a mid-card tag team that symbolized how far he had fallen. The once bright Lex Express had run out of fuel. When his contract expired later that year, there were no celebrations, no farewell speeches, no send-off. He simply packed his bags, wrestled his last match at a small house show, and walked away. But destiny wasn't done with him yet. Just 24 hours later, Lex Luger appeared live on the very first episode of WU Monday Nitro. No one saw it coming. Not the fans, not even Vince McMahon. The man who had once been Vince's chosen hero was now standing in the ring of his biggest rival, World Championship Wrestling. The wrestling world exploded. McMahon was blindsided. It was betrayal at its highest level. But for Lex, it was freedom. He wanted to start over again, one more time. And this time, something felt different. He wasn't the same arrogant bodybuilder from the 80s or the smiling patriot from the early 90s. He was calmer now, more grounded, more focused. Eric Bischoff, the man running WCW, didn't expect much from him. In fact, he had offered Lex one of the lowest contracts in the company, assuming he'd reject it. But Lex accepted it without hesitation. For once, it wasn't about money. It was about redemption. The night he walked into WCW Nitro unannounced, it sent shockwaves through the industry. Fans gasped. Commentators screamed. Wrestlers backstage couldn't believe it. Lex Luger, the total package, had just reignited the war between WWF and WCW. And for a brief moment, it looked like his story was finally turning around. But if history had taught him anything, it was that every high point in his life came with a fall waiting just around the corner. And this time, the fall would be darker, deeper, and more devastating than anything he had ever faced before. Lex Luger's story was already a roller coaster, but what came next felt like the ultimate plunge. The man who once stood atop the wrestling mountain was now standing face to face with the wreckage of his own making. His health was failing, his career was gone, and his name had become a cautionary tale whispered in locker rooms and documentaries. But deep inside, under all that guilt, pain, and regret, something still flickered. A faint spark that refused to die. In the early 2000s, Luger's downfall became impossible to hide. The glory had turned into isolation, and the cheers had become silent memories. Every headline about him now came with words like tragedy, arrest, or collapse. His body, once the symbol of perfection, began to break down under years of punishment and substance abuse. He suffered nerve damage and partial paralysis, one day waking up unable to move his neck or legs. The man who once flexed proudly in front of millions couldn't even stand without help. The wrestling world gasped. Lex Luger, the total package, was now confined to a wheelchair. This wasn't just another twist in a dramatic life story. This was rock bottom. For years, fans had seen wrestlers fall, but this was different. Luger's collapse was painfully human. It stripped away the fame, the muscles, the persona, and left only Larry Fole, the man behind Lex Luger, forced to confront everything he had become. The endless parties, the betrayals, the losses, they all came crashing back as memories he couldn't escape. But this time, there was no spotlight, no crowd, no redemption arc written by a promoter. It was just him, a hospital bed, and a lifetime of mistakes. Yet, oddly enough, that's where healing began. In that silence, he started to listen. To himself, to faith, to people who hadn't given up on him. For the first time in decades, he wasn't chasing fame or perfection. He was chasing peace. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It took years of physical therapy, spiritual awakening, and raw honesty. Lex began sharing his story, not as the invincible athlete, but as the broken man who survived his own destruction. He spoke in churches, recovery programs, and wrestling conventions, not to glorify his past, but to warn others about the price of ego and excess. His voice, once proud and booming, carried humility now, the kind that comes from true pain and hard-earned wisdom. When people saw him again, thinner, frail, but smiling, something remarkable happened. They didn't mock him, they respected him. Because they saw a man who had faced the very worst of himself and lived to tell the story. The same fans who once booed his arrogance now applauded his honesty. The wrestling community, known for its unforgiving nature, began to embrace him again. It was redemption, not in the ring, but in life. Still, not everything was healed. Luger never fully regained his physical strength, and he still carries the scars of his past. But he learned to live with them, to accept that the man who once thought he was untouchable was in the end human. That vulnerability became his greatest strength. He started helping others struggling with addiction, telling them, "If I can rise after everything I've done, so can you." His story, once a tragedy, slowly turned into a message of hope. Wrestling fans often debate legacy. Championships, fame, and glory are one way to measure it, but Lex Luger's legacy became something far deeper. He became a living reminder that success without peace destroys you, that image means nothing when the soul is empty, and that even the mightiest can fall, but also rise again. His redemption wasn't about fame anymore, it was about forgiveness. Forgiving himself, forgiving the past, and making peace with the man in the mirror. Today, when people look back at Lex Luger, they don't just see the chiseled superstar in the spotlight. They see the broken man who found meaning in his pain. His story is both a warning and a lesson, that the world will build you up and the world will tear you down, but what matters most is what's left when the noise fades. And so, as the curtain finally closes on Lex Luger's story, one question lingers, one that every viewer must answer for themselves. When everything you've built your life around disappears, fame, beauty, strength, success, what's left of you? Would you still recognize the person staring back in the mirror?